G'day guys, Sammy Hitsky here. I'm out at the dam today and I'm going to show you 3 basic ways to rig soft plastics and how to retrieve them as well. So I've got the 3 styles here. I've got a straight tail jerk shad style, I've got your paddle tail and also your grub tail. So we're going to rig them up and I'm going to show you how to retrieve each one. They're all a little bit different, but we'll give it a whirl. Okay, so we're going to do the grub tail plastic first. First step we're going to do is line that jig head up with the plastic and see where the hook is going to come out the back. So we know it's going to come out around there. Now this plastic here actually has 2 flaps in the middle and we're going to show you how to use those in a second. But the first step, grab your hook and thread it straight through the middle of the plastic there, all the way down, but come out just near those, at the end of those flaps there. After that you want to push it up the shank, over your plastic keeper, make sure it's the right way up, like so. And it should sit like that. Now this is where those flaps come in handy. You just want to bend them back a bit and pull your hook through like so. And there, she's nice and rigged straight. It's going to swim perfectly and that guy's ready to rock and roll. Okay, so the next plastic we've got is this 3.5-inch paddle tail. So perfect size for bass, flathead, that sort of stuff. And I'm running a 3/0 jig head through that. Now obviously with all your plastics, the size of your hook and jig head is going to depend on the size of your plastic. So you're going to have to make a judgment call on what size you're going to use for each plastic. Now, same as the last one, we want to line it up and see where that hook is going to come out the back. So we can tell it's going to come out about here. With this one we don't have the option of the flaps, so we're going to have to thread it the whole way. A little bit more tricky, but we should be right. So grab your jig head, put the hook right in the middle, like so. You want to keep the hook in the center of the plastic and thread it down as if you're threading a worm. So you've got to keep it nice and straight until you come to the point where you know that hook is going to line up. After that, you want to push the plastic over that keeper there and bingo, nice and straight. That guy's going to swim well. It's going to work great when you jig it hard, spin it back, it's going to swim nice and straight. Now I can't emphasize rigging your plastic straight enough. If that's all bent and twisted up, it's not going to swim properly, it's going to spin, it's not going to look natural in the water. Now the last plastic we've got is the straight tail jerk shad style. Now that's a 5-inch jerk shad, I've got a 5/0 treble, and that's going to come out about mid-back. So same with all your other plastics, once you determine the size of plastic you want to use, you want that hook to come out midway through the back. That's generally the best spot to rig them up. So with this one we have the option of the flaps in the middle, so it's going to make it a bit easier to rig up. But same as we did before, once we thread it through the middle, you come out at the start of those flaps, like so. Pull it the whole way through, spin it round, and then push it over the plastic keeper there. So our plastic is now like that. We know where the hook's going to come out, so we pull it up through the top side of the plastic, like so, and bingo. Super quick, super easy to do, it's dead straight, it's going to swim right every time. Okay, so the first plastic we're going to swim is this grub tail we've just rigged up. Now these grub tails, they're designed to imitate a little prawn, worm, little kind of creature that's cruising through the water. Now that grub tail, that extends and just wiggles away along. So when I'm picking a jig head, I always make sure I pick one heavy enough to make sure that grub tail works on the sink. It's a little hot tip for you. So the action for this, it's a lot slower than your normal action, but I'll show you how to do it. So, might even catch a bass while I'm here. So once your plastic out, obviously let it sink to the bottom. So you'll know it's hit the bottom, your line will go slack. And then what we're going to do, it's a lot shallow, it's more of a shake. We're going to shake the rod tip and then let it sink. And that's slowly going to glide back down, and then once it hits the bottom, shake the rod tip and let it sink. So what that plastic's doing is coming up the bottom like that and then slowly sinking down. That little tail is going to do all the action, it's going to do all the wiggling, and the fish are going to come up and they're probably going to hit it on the drop. That's generally when you get 90% of hits, but it's quite a simple action. So just a shake and then sink. Now you're probably only moving it that far off the bottom, that's where all the action happens, in that bottom section of the water there. but you're only moving it that far, but it's a slow, kind of undulating retrieve, and it just let it sink, slowly sinks back down, good to go. Okay, so the next plastic I'm going to show you how to retrieve is this guy here. That's a little paddle tail. So paddle tail plastics are perfect for your bass, your flathead, anything that eats a little bait fish. Now, with these guys, all the action's in the tail. That little tail thumps away on the rise and drop, so the action we're going to use is going to really influence that tail a lot. It's quite simple. So, flick them out. So we're going to let that sink to the bottom, and when these guys on the drop, that tail just goes the whole time. So be prepared, you may get hit on the drop when you first cast out, but always be watching your line ready for a hit, because they will come at any time. With these guys, it's a simple retrieve. You want to go 3 hops, and while you're hopping, slowly wind. It's not as aggressive as you'd say use for a jerk shad, but it's a bit more powerful than the grub tail. So 1, 2, 3. And then slowly let it sink back down. 1, 2, 3, and let it sink back down. So what that's doing is doing a staged rise, and that rise, that plastic's going to be working, that tail's going to be thumping away, and it's going to give it the impression of a fleeing bait fish. So perfect little action there for flathead, all those sorts of species. That action again, 1, 2, 3, then let it sink back down. Now, always watch your line. I've said it a heap of times. Watch your line. Be ready for a hit on the drop, because that's generally when they come. Okay, third and final, we've got our jerk shad. Now the jerk shad, I usually use it for a bit more pelagic fish, a bit more aggressive feeders like your snapper, your tuna, all those sort of bottom fish where you need to get a plastic down deep. So there's no drag on that plastic. It's going to sink quite quickly, but there's not as much action in the tail, so you kind of have to create that action yourself. It's not like the grub tail or the paddle tail where it does its own thing and you pretty well just have to let it do its own thing and it works for you. You have to put a bit of action in these guys for you. So let's get him out there. So once this guy's hit the bottom, we're going to give it 2 or 3 really aggressive whips. I believe it's called the whipping technique. I just call it jigging, but it's quite a hard action. So you want to go 1, 2, 3, and then let it sink back down. So what that's doing is really rocketing that plastic up off the bottom. That tail's flicking, hence the name flick bait, and then it's going to sink back down. And it's on the drop again, same with all the plastics, is when you're going to get the hit. Now, the advantage of using that quite aggressive retrieve is you're also going to bang that plastic way out of the strike zone of not of the fish, sorry, of the rocks. You're not going to get snagged as much. It's going to come out of the danger zone and then sink back down. So if you were to slowly drag it along the bottom, you're probably going to get snagged on your reef, whatnot. But if you're doing it quite an aggressive flick like that, it's going to flick it straight out of the reef, and then it's going to sink back down in a new location. So 1, 2, 3, let it sink back down. 1, 2, let it sink back down. Now with every flick, I'm giving it a couple wind to the handles just to move some, just to maintain some ground, bring some line in. But again, as it's dropping, that's when you're going to get the hits. Keep your eye on the line, and yeah, if you see any pelagics in the area, these are also great to chuck and spin high speed. So that's when your tuna will grab them, mackerel, all sorts of things. But very versatile plastic, great for the reefs, great for just about everything that swims. Righto guys, that's all the basics you need to know for 3 styles of plastics. Get out there and have a crack. Catch you later.